All right. Good evening, everyone. Today is August 22nd, 2022, and I call this Chanhassen City Council meeting to order. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening again, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. For the record, we have 3 of our 5 council members present, with council members Schubert and Campion absent. Our first action tonight is our agenda approval. Council members, are there any modifications to the agenda as printed? If not, we will proceed with the published agenda. There are no public announcements, so we will move right into the consent agenda. Tonight we have consent agenda items D1 through 13. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be recorded as a single motion based on staff recommendation. There will be no separate discussion of these items. Are there any items that the council would like to consider separately? If not, may I get a motion to approve consent agenda items D1 through 13?
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve agenda items D1 through D13.
Thank you, Councilman McDonald. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ream. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 3-0. Thank you. Next, we have visitor presentations. Visitor presentations are included with each of our regularly scheduled council meetings. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter that is not specifically on the agenda may step to the podium. Please provide your name and address for the record, and then please address the council. You will have 5 minutes to present your item. If your request includes an action item from either staff or council, please complete a citizen action request form so that we may appropriately follow up with your request. However, if you are not looking for an action and just here to make a comment, a form does not need to be completed. Please know that we do not take up these items at the council meeting tonight, and if you have any handouts that you would like to share with council, please hand them to a staff member. Is there anyone here that would like to say anything for visitor presentations? Okay. Next, we have the fire department and law enforcement update. And Chief, you're first tonight. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
My report will include the call stats from 2 months, June and July, since we were not here last month. Over those months, we had 106 calls in June and 101 calls in July for service. 160 of those calls were covered by staff scheduled. So 47 general alarms. There was only 45 of those were when we were not staffed at the station. So it's still showing a trend of most of our general alarms are just based on us not being staffed at the time. So significant calls included a cooking fire at Lake Susan Apartments, 2 mutual aid house fires. We did respond to the Hopkins house explosion that many of us saw in the news. We had a house fire in Chaska, a grass fire on Curvers Point, a garbage can fire on Park Road, and then 2 car fires, one at 212 and 101, and 5 and 41. We also dealt with a garage fire on Hidden Lane, which was our second garage fire in that area. This one was actually rags again, so the spontaneous combustion with folks that were staining. So again, we've encouraged people to make sure you read the labels on how to dispose of that stuff properly. But luckily, we were there quickly and not too much damage into the actual main living area. So I did produce a little bit of a mid-year for council. So through July, we've had a total of 629 calls, which is about 8.8% above where we were last year at that time. The no starts are at about 137, which at this time last year were 132. And again, those are the medicals that don't reach the level to start the fire department. So those we're still tracking those. 36% of those calls this year have come from Monday through Friday from 6 to 1600, so 06 in the morning until 4 p.m. And the duty crew calls currently total 392, which puts us on track for about 672 distinct duty crew calls, but adding in the day only and the chief calls from earlier in the year. We'll be close to 800 as far as staffed calls. Predictions would be about 1,100 calls for service by the end of the year, the way things are going. Most everything else is days of the week and hours of the day are remaining pretty consistent with what we've seen in past years. Over those 2 months, we had 143 total EMS responses. The top 3 of those were 29 are difficulty breathing, serious medicals were at 19, and unconscious, non-responsive. There was 13 motor vehicle accidents over those 2 months. And then looking at our how we're responding when we get there, there's about 70 of those patients that we actually dealt with patient assessment, interventions, and those types of things out of the 143. So we are arriving and continue to arrive a little bit ahead of Ridgeview, about 50% of the time. So again, the community is winning out of all of that. Only 19 of those calls out of the 143 resulted in no patient contact at that point, where Ridgeview could handle the call on their own. So a couple of activity reports. We've got the 4th of July was all staffed up. We did quite a few carnival cooking carts, the inspections on all the taste venues. We staffed the station for 24 hours on July 3rd and July 4th with duty crews. We did use the UAV 3 times for both fireworks presentations, the parade, and then the Lake Ann. We assisted with the annual mud run from Minnetonka, the annual relief meeting, and then provided coverage for Victoria so they could attend training. So overall, July was exceptionally busy for us. Training-wise, we did not train in July to give our folks a break, so we had no training in July. Our rookie class did complete their National Registry EMT practicals, so they are now on a waiting list. One of them has successfully passed the National Registry test, and the other 3 are scheduled for that test yet. So. And then we started our training back up this month with EMS training and ICS training. So, and I talked a little bit about the investigation on Hidden Lane. And then there is a note in there, Chief Nutter is still dealing with the Justice Department and the Consumer Protection Agency on the death that we had at Summerwood related to that space heater. So that happened, I want to say, in 2017, and we're still dealing with litigation there as witnesses. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Council, do you have any questions? I don't have any questions. However, a couple things. One, I love your comment about the community is winning. I think that's a great line. So, and it's very true. So I appreciate the response. The report with all the detail is great. I know you and I exchange emails. We haven't seen you since, but again, just our appreciation. I know there were a couple challenging calls and responses that the fire department had to go on. One, of course, with the Hopkins explosion, and then the pedestrian death here at 5 and Market, and just from the number of people, the passerbyers that commented about the quick action and response and how it was handled and managed, and that is. Obviously, we're so appreciative of that, but I know that weighs heavy on your team, and just wanted to, again, on behalf of council and the community, thank you for what you do day in and day out, because you see some pretty tough scenarios, so really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And then calling to our law enforcement partners, we had a CPR I'd like to talk about soon when we know more outcomes, but in both instances, the law enforcement are getting there at the same time we are, sometimes shortly before, and those events are hitting us all pretty tough. So,
Yes.
But again, I think from where we're poised and staffed and this 2-minute response and our public safety net here is getting a lot stronger, and what we're doing, and that goes to what we've done with staffing, and that goes back to our council and city leadership for their support. So it's easy for me to stand up and show you what we can do.
Great.
So.
Well, appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Lieutenant Pierce.
Madam Mayor and Council, I've asked Sergeant Grundman to do the monthly stats for the last 2 months tonight. We originally planned to do a drugs in the community presentation for council, but because of late council tonight, we're going to postpone that for a date in the future. So we'll have her come up and do that. But Sergeant Grundman will do the presentation tonight for June and July.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. So this is my first go around with this, so bear with me. So I'm going to be presenting for both June and July statistics for law enforcement. So we had 890 calls for service in June and 899 calls for service in July. So very comparable between the two. We continue to have a large majority of our calls be non-criminal and traffic-related calls. We did see an uptick in theft or fraud in the last, between June and July and now into August, which I'll go into a little bit more here. And then we also have been doing a number of traffic stops, which I'll also talk about a little bit here too. But in June, we had 273 traffic stops and 83 citations. And in July, we had 329 traffic stops and 84 citations. So one of the things that we're dealing with right now is kind of an uptick in catalytic converter thefts in Chanhassen and in Carver County as a whole. And we're not unique in that it's going on metro-wide. So we are looking at that. There's a lot of investigative things that are being done to look into those catalytic converter thefts, including utilizing our investigative analysts to create a map of where these thefts had occurred from, the times, the dates, trying to put together a pattern. And through that, we have developed some suspects. So we are actively working that, and so is our investigative unit. So that's one of the big things. Secondly, we did have a fatal accident in both June and July, which is pretty statistically significant, being that we did not have a fatal accident since 2015, and now we've had two in the course of 2 months. So some of the things that we're doing to curb that is utilizing our TZD grant to do extra enforcement. The Sheriff's Office also did get 2 brand new traffic squads that we're utilizing. They're marked with what's called ghost graphics, so they're not as easy to see and they're better for running traffic. So we've been doing a significant amount more of traffic enforcement and presence within the community, which shows in our traffic numbers as well. So we are also, in addition to that, we just started our own kind of traffic enforcement here in Carver County as a whole that we're going to be running today through September 19th for additional traffic enforcement. When looking at the numbers that are tracked for City Council in particular, being mental health, fraud, domestics, and domestic assaults, going through these numbers, looking at June and July, comparatively to years past, this is kept through 2019 to today's date, there's nothing that is, it's pretty statistically consistent. There's nothing of note on that. We also have a staffing update. The open FTE position in the contract has been filled as of August 3rd, so we are officially fully staffed in Chanhassen, which has been awesome to have the number of cops that we have on patrol and being able to have all the partners working together, so that's good. As far as a training update, we all did our rifle qualification in July. That was an on-duty shoot. In addition to law enforcement activities, we've also been involved in several events and community engagements, with the biggest one being 4th of July. That went very well from a law enforcement standpoint. We did not have any significant calls for service that are law enforcement related during that, and it went actually really smoothly and cleared out at the end of the night really well, so we were all grateful for that. We also participated in the Chaska area fishing with friends at Lake Ann, and a couple of the deputies went down there and did some fishing with the kids and other people who attended that event. And then lastly, this kind of runs into August, but it was close enough to July that I'm going to include it, is the Night to Unite. That went very well as well. We were out in the communities all the way until almost dark. And I think we attended a total of about 24 to 25 events for Night to Unite, so that went very, very well. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions? Councilman McDonald?
Hi, Sergeant, it's good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
You mentioned about the catalytic converters.
Yes.
Is there a particular type of car they're targeting, or is there something that residents can do to protect themselves, or what's the characteristics of all of this?
That's a very good question. Yes, there is a specific type of vehicle that is being targeted. It's usually something that's up higher off the ground because it is easier to get under a vehicle like that. So your SUVs, we're even seeing it on buses, box trucks, things like that, because it is easier to get under there and cut off the catalytic converter. Things that sit lower to the ground are kind of a bit harder. As far as deterring that, park in well-lit areas, park indoors if you can. There are things that you can do to try to make it harder to steal your catalytic converter, things you can put on your vehicle. But, you know, it's just kind of the typical theft deterrent things.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Sergeant and I have ridden now 2 years in a row for night out, and it's always been a pleasure to ride with her. The police are well respected. I can tell you in this community, the kids always look forward to whenever we would pull up. So thank you very much for all of that.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, and I don't know if this is a question for you, Sergeant, or you, Ms. Hokanen. Are there other communities? I know that they've seen the catalytic converter theft over the past year in other communities at a higher rate, and it's now just coming into this area a little bit more. Are other communities doing anything from a policy perspective and maybe enforcement? I feel like there's been different responses. Are you familiar with what other communities are doing?
A little bit, Mayor and Council. I know there are a few communities that have passed an ordinance that it's illegal to possess a catalytic converter unless you can prove ownership. And so that would, Lieutenant Pierce and I have talked about in the past, and I think we'll probably revisit given this information. There are also communities that are hosting events to do some etching on the catalytic converters, which I believe assists if they are, it deters from taking them because it makes it harder to resell them. And that is something that we could also look into. I don't know if Sergeant is aware of any other techniques, but we'd be happy to look into any of those.
Yeah, I know that there's some stuff being looked at, I think even on a legislative level, to deal with this, because it is not only metro-wide, but it's nationwide issue that's going on with the catalytic converters. So I think that there's, going to probably be some stuff eventually, hopefully coming down the line with that. So, yeah.
Okay. And as you continue to, and Lieutenant Pierce, I saw you kind of make a move. Do you want to come up and say anything? You're welcome.
I don't want to step on.
Come in.
Okay, so I know there's on the legislative front, they are looking at coming up with a legislative statute that says you can't possess these, right, unless you can prove ownership. So I know that's in the works. But in the meantime, yes, City Manager Hokanen's correct. The etching is one idea. They've got some tracking devices from our end of things, but that's been really hit and miss. I don't even know that we do that right now because we have to put it on a specific vehicle and then hope it gets stolen.
Oh,
And so it just doesn't work. The logistics and some of that stuff just doesn't work out in our favor.
Right.
And some of these vehicles, they can take that off in less than 2 minutes. And so, when we talk about parking inside well-lit areas, your typical theft deterrent stuff, that only works so much, especially when it takes such little time to remove these things, and it's literally less than 2 minutes and it can be gone.
Right.
And we've tried some other stuff where that's on a county-wide level where we thought we're getting some hot spots, and we have just not been able to narrow that down.
Okay.
Based on some of those other factors that come into play.
Right, and since you're kind of going through the investigative piece right now and pulling those pieces together, will there be, and maybe this is a follow-up question, but like establish that threshold of now we're at that point, so now the city should take an action as it relates to policy? and come back with that recommendation once it reaches a certain threshold that you're seeing in terms of numbers?
City manager and I can certainly talk that through a little
Okay.
bit. I'm not sure that if policy is gonna help the.
Like an ordinance or,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, or even if city ordinance would help that, because in my time, granted, I don't do a lot of patrol work anymore, but sometimes I'm out and about. I have yet to see somebody with a catalytic converter in their vehicle.
Okay.
And so, because that's where it would be, either the statute or an ordinance would say, you can't possess it
Oh, I see.
without proving that it's yours, or you legally purchased it somewhere. I've never seen one in somebody's vehicle.
Right, they're not walking around with it for show and tell. Gotcha, okay.
And I'm sure, I'm sure that the ones that are, you're not gonna find one, you're gonna find a bunch of them.
Right, okay. I just remember, and that's why I asked, is because I feel when this was a topic of conversation within other communities, they were looking at ways to do something to address it, and I wasn't sure how that really flushed out or what happened, and should we be doing something as well, so.
Sure, and I think the city manager and I can certainly talk through
Okay.
that
Perfect.
city ordinance component.
Okay, but I mean, your point is clearly taken, so understood. All right, thank you. Any other questions? And I will reiterate my comments that I made to the chief, to both of you and your crew. I know there's been, in addition to the, the death here, there's been other scenarios that we've been confronted in Chanhassen, and just really appreciate the professionalism that your team possesses and how they approach every situation, and appreciate all that you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we'll certainly pass that on to our team.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice
Any
job,
other questions?
Sergeant.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have a public hearing for a beer and wine liquor license.
Okay, well, I can get going. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Tonight I will be discussing the request from Taliwala for an on-sale beer and wine liquor license. So the city received a request for an on-sale beer and wine liquor license from Manaslu Group LLC, doing business as Taliwala. I've been told to pronounce it, or it's pronounced without the H. This will be a new restaurant that will occupy approximately 2,796 square feet, located at 7850 Market Boulevard. Taliwala will be serving Indian food in a fast casual concept. This space was previously occupied by Cafe Time restaurant. It will seat 55 inside and 12 on the outdoor patio. The applicant has indicated that they anticipate to open September 19th of 2022. Manaslu Group LLC consists of two partners, Rashmi Bhattachan and Sarala Katel. I apologize if I mispronounce either of those names. Law enforcement conducted a background investigation, including criminal history, driving records, outstanding warrants, financial and reference checks on the two partners. Lieutenant Lance Pierce reviewed the background summary and noted that there was nothing questionable related to state statute. A certificate of insurance showing liquor liability and workers' compensation insurance is required to be submitted to the city prior to issuance of the liquor license. The applicant will need to provide these documents prior to forwarding the approved application onto the state. The required annual fee for the on-sale beer and wine liquor license is $410, and the background investigation fee is $250. The applicant paid the background investigation fee at the time of the application, and the license fee is due upon council approval. A public hearing notice was published in the Chanhassen Villager on August 11th and mailed to all property owners within 500 feet of the site. As of the date of this writing, staff has not received any comments from the public. And that is all the information I have.
Thank you. Before I open the public hearing, Council, do you have any questions? If not, I hereby open the public hearing. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, and then please address council. All right, with nobody here, I will close the public hearing. and return it to council for any questions, comments, or motion, please. Councilman McDonald.
Madam Mayor, I guess I'll make the motion. I would propose that the Chanhassen City Council approve the application for an on-sale beer and wine liquor license from the Masula, is that right? Masula Group?
I think you got it.
LLC, doing business as Tawali, located at 7850 Market Boulevard.
Thank you, Councilman McDonald. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ream. We have a valid motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 3-0. Excited about another new restaurant in Chanhassen. So I know the applicant was hoping to be here, but was unable to. But we welcome them to Chanhassen and are excited about another great restaurant. So we have no general business. Are there any council presentations this evening? Nothing? Anything administratively?
No, Mayor?
And any questions on the correspondence discussion? All right, another short meeting. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman McDonald. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ream. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 3-0. We are adjourned.